This is the Mulligans 2 podcast. I'm Terry David Mulligan. This is a very special occasion when the marquee outside a theater says Robert De Niro, Al Pacino, Martin Scorsese, or The Irishman. You know you're in Oscar land simply because these three gentlemen have made movies together over the years that we've all grown up with. But when they all get together for maybe the final time, that's something very, very special. The Irishman opens in Toronto on Friday, November the 8th, followed by Vancouver, Montreal, Ottawa, November the 15th, and then the rest of Canada as it expands over the course of November. The cast is sensational. Harvey Keitel, Ray Romano, Bobby Cannavale, Anna Paquin, and, trust me, many more. It's about organized crime in the 50s, right after World War II, and you're actually following the life of a World War II veteran, Frank Sheeran, who actually existed. He was a hustler and a hitman. This story comes from the book I Hear You Paint Houses, which was a slang term used by the mob for someone who was a hitman, and the painting of houses was the blood up against the wall. Robert De Niro plays the Irishman. Al Pacino plays union boss Jimmy Hoffa. And Joe Pesci, who steals the damn movie, plays the mob boss. It's well over 3 hours, this film. There's a lot of music in there. Robbie Robertson did the scoring. And it is absolutely positively in the Oscar race. Slam dunk. It may be the film to beat. There's still more films to come, obviously. This was a press conference. This was not your normal one-on-one. You can't do that when you have Scorsese, Pacino, De Niro. Instead of tying them up for an entire day, they just held a press conference. All of the journalists there were given a number, and that's who you hear. You can hear the Netflix personnel calling out the number of the journalist who got the lucky draw and the break and got to ask their question. But here's a great conversation amongst three friends: Al Pacino, Robert De Niro, Martin Scorsese. They are the Irishman.
Al Pacino, Robert De Niro, and the director of The Irishman, Martin Scorsese. All right, gentlemen, let's begin today's official Critics' Choice Association press conference. Let's do it. Journalist
who's doing it?
Number 21.
They go by numbers like the old butcher shop. Remember?
Oh, it's so good to start, isn't it? First, thank you. Since I am starting, thank you so much for taking this time with us today. I noticed throughout the movie themes of heavy choices, those kind of things. It got me curious in your own careers and lives. What are some of the most weighted choices that you've had to make in your own life, knowing that maybe it's a turning point in what you're doing in your career or other things like that, and how that maybe applies into identifying with characters in the movie and the process of making the movie, all that kind of stuff. So, and by the way, Aaron Dicer, Springfield, Missouri, civpop.com, and NBCKY3.
It's like a whole life, don't you? It's like you want to start like when? And then you say, oh, I should have done that, and then I shouldn't have done, you know? What do you think, Al?
Well, I really had trouble deciding whether I should do The Godfather or not. That's a joke. Eh?
I'm wondering, yeah. That's very good. That's really good. You got me there.
That was a tough one.
I thought it was real. Okay.
It was a life changer. But at the same time, that's all relevant, isn't it? It's relevant to where you are at that time in your life. So a decision you make based on instinct is different than this, you know. So that I know. But I made a couple of choices that, in terms of, there's life choices, of course, there's which career is life, though. Your work is life, too. But I made a couple of choices that I thought were, I knew going in, and they turned out to be really very great for other people. I didn't do it. But at the same time, it's sort of, when I look back at it, that's the choice I made. It didn't bother me at all that they turned out to be well, or, so I can't remember a choice. There was one choice I made, but I cannot say it. Because if I say it, it's going to be about somebody who is still around and is working. And he isn't up on this stage, I'll tell you that. But it was a choice of playing a character. And I was offered this tremendous opportunity. And I didn't feel right about it. And I then went to see somebody do something that it was connected to the role I would have played. But it was too late because some great actor had taken the part. And then when I saw it, they were great in it, so it didn't bother me. And then there was another one too that happened to. But I felt at the time I made a choice because there was a period of, I'm going on talking too much. I mean, I'm sorry. I have that sort of trail off thing. I go into it and I'm gone. Are you done yet?
I'm waiting for Bob. Bob, you're going to do yours, right?
That's great.
About your life choices or career choices, or how do you?
Well, I mean, I've had a lot. It's too complicated to go into in this situation, but I guess in relation to this movie, I'm very happy that we worked so hard to get it to where it is today, and because we worked hard and are part of something very special, and then I'm so grateful that it seems to be getting a great reception, and that's, so that's a good feeling for me in my life and everybody around me. So I feel really terrific about that. I have so many other life choices that I couldn't go into. In a book you could do it, but here that I'm going this, whatever. So I hope that's a decent answer.
Okay. Do I have to answer? Well, I mean, it's a complicated thing, of course. I mean, I found that over the years, the choices I made in terms of making films, it got to a point that each film was another lifetime, and I went ahead and made choices as to what I felt comfortable with. I tried some experiments from time to time, but in so doing, I backed out of 2 or 3 major movies that became very popular and very famous and award-winning and that sort of thing. But I couldn't find my way in there. I didn't know why until years later. Years later, when it became. So I always have this line about the professional and the amateur in a way. Like if I stayed an amateur, I think that was pretty good. But an amateur is the word love is an amateur. I'm not putting down professionals, and I always wish I could be. But it took me a long time to understand that, and I guess I shied away from certain projects because I just didn't know how to do them. I didn't feel I had that connection with it, and the connection has to be something personal. And there are other reasons too, but it's a more layered than what I'm saying. But when the film you didn't do is a great success, maybe I couldn't. I couldn't do it. And if I had made it, it wouldn't have been the great success. I don't mean to be self-deprecation, but what I mean is that it would have been a different film. You follow? And so, you made your choice.
Sorry. Scott Menzel, We Live Entertainment. Just an incredible film, honestly. You just don't see movies like this anymore. Amazing. Talk about the challenges of reuniting, and for you, Pacino, for the first time with him, but for you, De Niro, reuniting with him after all these years.
Is that a challenge?
Who goes first?
Oh, you go. Because he was asking you guys about reuniting with me.
Well, Al and I have known each other over the years. We've known each other for decades, since we were in our 20s. And we've worked a couple of times together, and we've had an unusual relationship in some ways, and maybe not so unusual, where we always felt close because of our situations, and we would commiserate or confide or talk or get advice about things over the years, over the decades. And we've worked together too. With this project, Al and I were at an opening in Europe. I think it might have been London. It was London, Paris, or Spain, and we were so, like, the people were so great, and the crowd. So we said, why not? One day we hope that we'd be as deserving of this kind of adoration with something that we're more proud of, and then so that this to us is what that is. And I remember the last day of Al's shooting in the Irishman, and I said, remember when we said that to each other that time? And this, for nothing else, we did it in this movie, and we will be proud of it. We are proud of it. So I don't know if that's answering the question or not, but I'm just sort of, Anything else?
Okay, great.
Okay.
Journalist with the number 18.
I have a loud enough voice. I don't think I need the mic, but okay. I'm Tom Tangney from Kyber Radio in Seattle. This question's a little bit out of the box, so I want to warn you ahead of time. First off,
Oh, no.
I think it's pretty clear, having seen the film now, that Mr. De Niro and Mr. Pacino, you guys were born to play the roles that you played. However, I was wondering if you would take part in a little speculation. And ultimately, I realize this is a question for Martin Scorsese more than the actors, but I'd like to hear from all three of you. And that is, can you imagine what the movie would be like if you two had swapped roles? If Robert De Niro, you played Hoffa, and Al, you played Frank, how different would that movie have been given the same, all things being equal, from the director's point of view?
Can I answer that?
Absolutely. Take it away.
Finally, a question that I got a parable for. I'm so ready now. Sorry, guys.
That's all right.
Anybody got a pillow?
No.
Here it is. I was at the Actors Studio, young man at the Actors Studio. I was about 25 at the time. And I was too shy to do a scene there. I've been there for about 6 months, and I'd see people, and I would be sitting watching, and then I'd go home, and I didn't know anyone there. And then I finally signed up to do a scene. Because at the studio, you have sessions. I'm sorry, this is going to go on. I'm not going to do it.
Keep going. It's good.
I got to slow it down. So I'm there, and then I had the scene, and I was going to do Hickey from Eugene O'Neill's Iceman Cometh, and Hamlet. And wrote it down. And it was my turn finally to go up in front of the great Lee Strasberg at the Actors Studio, the hallowed Actors Studio, with all these people who sit out there. And what they do is you do a scene, and afterward they don't criticize it, they discuss it with Lee as the moderator, because it is for professionals. It's not an acting school, the Actors Studio. So anyway, I went up there, and Lee Strasberg was sitting where he sat in the front, and you'd go up on this stage there at the studio. And he said, wow, first of all, he said, Al Pacino. He pronounced my name right. That never happened. I went to a whole school, public school, they never, Pacini, Pacuno, Pacani, that kind of thing. But I said, he's pronounced my name right. He's a great man. So I went up there and I did a monologue from The Iceman Cometh, which I had done all my life. And I did it, and it was over, and then I turned around and I started Hamlet. Oh, what a rogue, because he looked at the card, he's Al Pacino, Hamlet, and Hickey from The Iceman Cometh. He said, all right, let's go do it. And I got up there and I did Hickey. I did it all. And then I turned around and I did Hamlet. And he said to me, stopped the class. It was quiet, and he said, "All right, I want you to do Hickey as Hamlet, and Hamlet as Hickey."
Wow. There you go. That's great.
Right?
That is great.
What did I do? Immediately, I went into Hickey as Hamlet, and Hamlet as Hickey. I did them both, and you know what he said? We take in all kinds here, and the audience was standing up and cheering at the Eccleston. So what happened is I did both parts relatively well, I guess. But the point is, that's the point. You inspired that story. I'm sorry, but
It's good.
does it answer it? Does it answer it? Thank you. Thank you. I've been wanting to tell that story for years. Finally, I've been...
Hard to top that. Journalist number 63.
How you doing? This is an honor. Thank you. Robbie's score was brilliant. Thank you for shooting on 35 millimeter film. It looked glorious. It really, really, really did. I wanted to talk to you specifically about the de-aging, not the CGI aspect of it, but the way you shot it on set, how you lit those scenes, how you were able to get those scenes shot so that your visual effects artists could de-age them. And for Mr. Pacino and Mr. De Niro, when you saw the younger version of yourself on screen for the first time, what is the one role of yours that came to mind when you saw that younger version of yourself? And Kevin McCarthy, WTTG, Washington, D.C. Thank you very much.
Technical issue. This computer-generated imagery was really designed by ILM, Pablo Hellman, and everybody there. And so, in conjunction with Rodrigo Prieto, they worked this out in terms of lighting. Is stuff that I didn't necessarily participate in terms of. There were some technical things. And why is that there? And that explained, well, because the marker on the face has to hit a certain place, et cetera. But I didn't find that their work with the technical aspects of the lighting that was necessary interfered in any way with what I was doing and what the actors were doing. And I think the one of the key changes that we noticed on set really was the cameras themselves. The cameras had 3 lenses. And I was shooting 2 cameras a lot of the time, so we had 6 lenses. And we had extra crew. And we were carrying 9 cameras altogether because of other issues. And so it became a pretty big operation in a way. And there was a little ritual. Oh, yeah, but the center lens was capturing the image. Then there were lenses on either side that were dealing with the information coming from the computer from the markers on their faces, and which were developed in such a way as they were almost invisible, which was great. And the thing about it, then there was this sort of ritual after each time we did a take. Everything would stop, and a young man would come out, and he'd have a board with some kind of design on it, and he'd move it a certain way. And I'd be looking at, what the hell is this? And then it was dead quiet, and then he goes back, and then he comes out with a silver ball. And the ball moved. And I would call it the adoration of the ball at this point. And I realized it was like a benediction of some kind. And he turned it, and then the ball was opaque. It wasn't silver. And he moved it a certain way. I still don't know exactly what that is. But at that point, at first I'm saying, what the hell am I waiting for? And then I realized, this is what's going to be. This is how, now we do the slate, now we do the ball, now we wait. Okay, then everybody can move on. And every time we were using that stuff, that's what we do. Remember, it sort of became like a welcome ritual. And that was the only thing that I felt was that I was cognizant of, really, on the set. And I think basically one of the things that was interesting was the nature of movement that you guys had to work with. Maybe you could talk about that, you know?
Well, for me, the challenge would come pretty much every time I really moved in the thing. So they'd say, Al, you're 39. And I'd say, I know that. And it would say, all right. And then they'd say, 39. Then I'd have to be in the scene, and I'd have to get up. And this would start. And we had a guy there just come up to you and say, you're 39. You get up like a 39-year-old. And I say, oh, yes. And then we do the scene, and I'd get up like that. So I wondered how you
Remember that day?
guys.
Well, the thing was that he came up to me and he said, it was the first day of shooting, and he said, you were yelling at the TV about the Kennedys and stuff, and you got up. And I said, great. Then we did another take. I said, terrific. Okay, we're going to do one more. And then and they came up to me and they said, he's supposed to be 49 in this. And I said, oh, what does that mean? I said, he doesn't look like he's getting up at 49. So I told the guys, I said, you tell him. It's the first day I'm working with the man. I don't want to go over, hey, what do you do? Wait, 40 years we haven't worked. I got to get the first thing I'm going to tell him. So, I say, okay, I'll go tell him. So I said, Al, everything's fine. Yeah. I said, the only thing is you're 49. He went, oh. And I said, okay, I get it. So we did another take, and you got up. And we cut, and he said, what do you think? And he said, 62. It became a number game until you finally got it.
56.
56?
Journalist
I get up as
with the number
56.
56.
I'm Jennifer Marin. I'm from New York. I'm president of the Alliance of Women Film Journalists and the film critic for the Rio Times. And thank you very much for a brilliant film and for all of your work that you've done throughout your careers. This film, in watching this film, I think I felt a sort of a seismic shift in your movie making. There is a real connection here to concern about social impact and the effect that film can have in the world. And you've been obsessed and working on the issue of corruption and crime for many, many years. I'm just wondering whether you came into this with a notion of, or you feel that there has been a change in your the overall working, the overall structure of the film and the overall intent of the film with regard to social and political issues of the day.
That's for me.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, yes, there was a change, and having gone through Mean Streets and Goodfellas and Casino, I had covered the territory in specific ways at those times. The overall issue of corruption is something that I tend to be attracted to as material. What happened with Frank, when you described the character to me, and I read the book had this whole backdrop of this history. You see, their history, the history of the United States, the world, all this going on. And I said, I think I know what to do. I think it's a matter of just like having cut the whole thing down to its essentials and deal with the emotional impact, ultimately, of the life you lead, and everything else, whether it's the Cuban Missile Crisis or, Joey Gallo being shot, it's all peripheral, all forgotten about ultimately. And so, in a way, it freed me. And in terms of corruption, it's that part of a human being. It's in the Asphalt Jungle. Louis Calhern has a line. It's great. Where he goes, his wife says, "Why do you always?" He's a lawyer. Why do you always defend the bad guys and gangsters and that sort of thing? He goes, "Well, I look at crime as sort of a left-handed endeavor of the human condition." And yeah, it's the left and the right in the sense of the right hand of the Father, the left hand of God. The whole sense of that's part of who we are. And it's always there. The dark forces are always there. Do we succumb to them all the time? Do we get sucked in and pulled back out? I mean, this is the whole thing. It has to do with our own, our pride too. In the case of Jimmy, when he keeps saying it's my union, it damn well is his union, but he lost it. In any event, it's more than corruption. It's about what's in ourselves as human beings.
Great. Journalist with the number 3.
Hi, good afternoon. I'm Kathy Woods, Couple Social. My question is, how do you, like in this climate where we're questioning, we're a little bit more aware of how a person comes to crime, and what are some of the things that makes a person go from good to bad? Do you feel like you have a responsibility to show the effects and also some of the causes? Or do you just feel like, creatively, I'm just going to make the movie and it lands. It takes me wherever, your instincts take you, any of you.
I got it. For me, it's always been for different reasons, personal reasons or whatever. I'm aware of people that I knew around me sometimes who I knew were genuinely good people but wound up doing bad things. And then, ultimately, are they cast out? Are they cast out of a religious institution, or are they cast out of the society around them? In some cases, they are. But in terms of certain religious aspects, as I mean, silence and movies like that, the bottom line is the wretched, the ones who couldn't help it, the ones who can't do anything else. They're the ones that demand the compassion. And it's very hard, and there's a compassion and understanding. You may hate it, you may get, I don't know, but that's a very important thing to nurture in a human being and not cut people off dead. I remember back when Mean Streets were shown at the New York Film Festival, one critic who actually was very nice with me at certain times, but this time he hated the film. And, Mean Streets was the first. And afterwards, he was very nice about certain films. Anyway, I don't want to mention his name. Good guy, let him be. A long time ago. Anyway, there was another film that ended the festival. It was a terrific film, and I want to mention the name because it is a beautiful film, and the filmmaker's a good friend. But when the festival was over, he wrote that the last film, the film I just mentioned, is the front page. That's the front pages. Mean Streets is the back page. And I said, well, you didn't like the movie. Then over the years I realized that's right, it is the back page. The back page what? What is that? Human beings. It's still about, it's the back page. A guy shot in an alley, somebody caught and arrested and spends 20 years in life for something, in jail for something that, 5 years later the law changes. What about them? We're the back pages, So that's what we've been doing.
Last question.
Journalist number 1.
Oh my God, thank you. Mose Persico, CTV, Montreal. Gentlemen, thank you for being here. And as a proud Italian born in Italy, it's an honor to share the same space with you. I mean, our family dogs are called Pacino and De Niro. True story. Mr. De Niro knows that. And
that's a fact.
Mr. Pacino will show you a picture. And our next one will be called Marty.
Thank you. That's it.
I promise. First of all, Mr. Scorsese, congratulations on creating another filmmaking masterpiece. Mr. De Niro and Mr. Pacino, in addition to all of you being Academy Award-winning actors, you're also directors, Mr. De Niro and Mr. Pacino. I know that Mr. De Niro has continuously worked with Mr. Scorsese. It's his 9th collaboration. Mr. Pacino, it's your first collaboration. From a filmmaking point of view, did you acquire any directing techniques after working with this genius?
Did you hear that?
I did. Well, that's a really interesting question. I have. This is the second one today. I'm glad to say this. I've directed films in the sense that I was the director, the filmmaker of it, but I'm not a director, and I'm not a filmmaker. They are. And I say that with all, I'm not being, it's just, I make films like when I do it, I mean, it's a learning experience for me, and it's a sense of doing a home movie I have, and and this is where I learned about film by directing a film. I learned about editing and what it was by doing my own, how does someone, I have to say I was fortunate to have done Looking for Richard. Yeah. I did that because I had some idea, but really why I did it, what was motivated me, was that I did Richard III several times, and when I did it in New York on Broadway, the reviewer said, Pacino has set back Shakespeare 50 years in America. And I said, that can't be. I love Shakespeare.
Oh, I love it.
And I had done it in, in Boston, and there's a whole reason why that thing didn't happen, and one of the reasons was it didn't have a concept in terms of, it's so interesting. You know, I could go on forever, and I'm going to do that. I'm going to go on forever. But when we did it at the Loeb Theater, it didn't work at all. I was a young guy, but I was famous already. But I had done Richard III because I knew I had done it at the Actors Studio and had a feeling for it. I just wanted to do it, and I wanted to learn. I always pretty much want to learn. And working with these guys, I learned a lot. That's sort of what I leave that's probably why I continue to do it. But I did it, and I did it at the Loeb. This is interesting. And the set was, because I'll tell you something about Irishman and what they did in Irishman about a set. You've seen it, so I can talk to you about it. But I did it at the Loeb in Cambridge. And I mean, I was going on with a fever. I was all, my friend was giving me the words, and I had 2 weeks, but it wasn't there. And I go out, and you haven't lived until you go out in the second act, and there's a lot of red seats in front of you. Half the audience left, maybe 2/3, and I thought, what did I do? What's wrong with me? And so, but then I turned around and looked at the set. And the set was a bunch of bars. I don't know who did that and what it came from. I had no idea what I was doing, now is the winter of our discontent, but in front of bars. And I don't know where the hell I was. So they threw me out of Boston. They threw me out of Cambridge. But as I was leaving, my great friend and mentor, Charlie Lawton, said to me, Al, I don't know, I think I see something there. I see something there in what you're doing. David Wheeler, the great theater company of Boston director, he gave me, Al, let's not just give this up, please. I said, well, I know, but I feel, I want to get out of town or something. And they said, no, we got this Church of the Covenant. It was right on Marlborough Street, beautiful. This church. And we all went in there, this medieval sort of thing. And I came up, there was a pulpit, and I came up from the pulpit like this with a stocking hat on. And I said, now is the winter of our discontent. And the thing just started to go. We had a set. We had a concept, a context. You understand? And when we went to Broadway, we didn't bring the church. And these are important things. Now, there's a scene, if you saw it, in The Irishman, where Jimmy Hoffa is going to his end. He doesn't know it. He goes into this place, this house. And I walked in on the first day on the set of this particular scene. I walked into the house, and I see this house. Nothing you could really overtly recognize, but I knew that this house was deadly. Just the way they had put it together. But you couldn't find it. They didn't have things all over it. It was just simple furniture, but in such a way. I thought, this is so, you talk about artful, and that's what I saw. This is what is done as directors. And you saw, it didn't do anything, but this is a place where someone was going to die. Yeah. And it looked like a normal little house, but it wasn't, because they did certain things. And if he ever would go into the details of what they did, you'd know what they did. It was a lot, but it looked like nothing. So I don't see the world that way. I don't see the world as my creative feelings don't come from getting concepts like that. This isn't me. So I'm not a director, because I don't want to. First thing I do when I finish the film is I go read a play. What play am I going to do? I'll do Richard again, in a church, of course. But that's my thing. So the other directing things I did is because I liked particular plays. If I did Chinese Coffee, I'm sure none of you saw it. It didn't. Well, that's good to hear. I did it because I very much wanted to. I wanted to preserve that piece of material that I really liked it. I liked what it was. I liked the writer, Ira Lewis, who's gone now. And I liked that atmosphere of what those guys were going through in the village, and the artists from the 60s, now in the 80s. And the whole concept made me feel like I wanted to be in it. And I didn't have anyone I could pay to direct it, so I did it myself. That's why I directed. And then I directed another thing called The Local Stigmatic, again, which was very interesting. And I did that knowing that this is not going to go anywhere. But it was a way of me preserving some of the stuff. I had the money at the time, so I was able to help with the financing of it. And that was my reasoning. So even though I directed film and whatever, I don't look at it, I don't look at myself that way. I have no desire to do it. And I have great respect and admiration for people who just do that. And it's not me. It's like, I like football, but I won't play it.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Mulligan's Do, the podcast. I'm Terry David Mulligan, in conversation with Al Pacino, Robert De Niro, Martin Scorsese about their film, The Irishman, and their life and times. And isn't it great to hear the conversation between the three of them? I mean, wouldn't you love to have dinner with those three in a booth somewhere? Just the stories they would tell. And you can tell the mutual respect. They're friends. That's why they can spend days, weeks, years on sets and still talk to one another and be friends. It was nice to hear that format, that conversation. Thank you to Netflix for putting the three of them together along with all of the journalists. And there's more of those to come, by the way. As a matter of fact, I'm currently in New York, coming back with more interviews for you. We have interviews coming up with Sean Varro from Wide Mouth Mason, Stephen Fearing about his new album, and a revealing conversation with Hugh Dillon, the leader, frankly, of the Headstones, the guy who played Joe Dick in Hardcore Logo, and who is famous for his acting in Durham County, Flashpoint, Hardcore Logo, Yellowstone, Wind River, The Expanse, X Company, Down to the Bone, The Killing Continuum, Twin Peaks with David Lynch. He is a working actor, Hugh Dillon. And we're going to talk about his new album called People Skills. We'll talk about all the acting he's doing, as well as our mutual friends. And they include the Tragically Hip. So, coming up on the Mulligan's 2 podcast, please consider subscribing on Spotify, Google Play, or Apple Podcasts. And you can always check out the details and the past conversations at mulliganstew.ca. Go see The Irishman. You're going to be talking about it for a long time. Thank you for listening.